The Indianapolis Colts are not a JV team. They are playing a kind of JV team, but once they get some help around Joe Burrow, they won't be. The Colts have closed their facility. They've issued the statement. This is the latest hold your breath and wait and see what happens moment. They've got several individuals who have tested positive for COVID-19. The team is currently in the process of confirming those tests. Now, this happened yesterday with the Falcons. They shut it all down because of one positive test. There were some reports that it was 4. It was just 1, and they determined it was a false positive. Peter, I don't get it. How in the hell are these NFL teams all having false positives? And it seems like every time over the past week, other than Tennessee and New England, it's been a positive. It has been a false positive. It happened with the Jets last Friday. It happened with the Falcons yesterday. And it's almost like presumed, like we're just temporarily shutting down while we wait for the news that it really was a false positive. Well, what if it's not? And you've got several. For all of them to be false positives, to me, that's a bigger problem than having positives because you can't trust your testing accuracy if that many come back positive at any given moment.
Mike, I think one of the important things, and this is probably a 180 from the question that you ask, but
that's all right.
I think
I'm used
it was
to watching
really
the debates.
Significant. Yeah. Oh, geez. So when the New York Jets had their problem, okay, you know what helped them? What helped them is that their bioreference testing lab was 24 miles away in Elmwood Park, New Jersey. And the reason that helped them is that instead of, let's say you're the New Orleans Saints and you have to put your COVID tests on an airplane, I think to Houston. And, if you're the Seattle Seahawks and you have to put your tests on an airplane to California, you can't get them back, maybe as quickly as a team like the Jets or the Giants or the Houston Texans. By the time those teams say, well, look, these might be false positives and we have to go get them checked. I mean, it's very easy by that time. And if you have to give additional testing, it's very easy for them to do that and to get the results back faster than most teams, quite frankly, in the NFL. So, and I don't think that that the Colts have a facility in Indianapolis. I don't know about the Atlanta Falcons. But those are the kind of things right now that allow teams to work a little bit faster in getting over and getting the knowledge about these negative tests.
Yeah, and isn't that just a strange dynamic to all of this, that how close you are to the lab allows you to find out sooner than other teams whether or not it is a false positive, whether or not you're all clear, whatever the case may be. And that's one thing that I was hearing a couple of weeks ago, because one team was getting their results like at 4 in the morning. The Titans get them at 4 in the morning. Others were getting them that night. Others are getting them the next morning. And I had different people saying, oh, wait a minute, you're wrong when you said that team gets it at 8 o'clock. We get it at whenever. And it's like, no, and I started asking around. It's like, no, everybody gets them at different times. It's all driven by how close the lab is to the team.
Proximity.
And there's just something about that seems odd to me. And this goes back to May. I remember after the draft when the NFL kind of did a victory lap of sorts about getting the draft done. And then you pivot to, okay, we got a season coming in a few months. Are we going to be ready for it? The impression that the NFL had, the people in positions of power had at the time, was the testing would be so much more advanced and you'd be able to do what they call a point of care test, where you don't have to send it off to a laboratory and you have close to 100% certainty that it's a positive that's real, it's a negative that's real, and you can do it before you even walk in the facility. And the fact that the technology hasn't gotten to that point really is a problem for some of these teams, that they have to wait a differing amount of hours to find out, is it a false positive? Is it a true positive? Is it, well, you're not going to find out if it's a false negative until the next day when you get the positive. But the fact that you can't get the information right away is going to hurt some of these teams. It's going to complicate situations like what the Colts are dealing with this morning.
Mike, you know what else I see happening here, as we discuss this? So look at the 2 games right now that you would think are in some jeopardy this weekend. Okay, one is Indianapolis and Cincinnati. The other is Atlanta and Minnesota. We may now be getting to the point where the NFL, if they don't play these games this weekend, where the NFL sort of holds in abeyance the decision about what they're going to do. And maybe they wait and tentatively say, yes, we will have a decision at some point in the future about whether we are going to play these games and when we are going to play these games. Because it's like I've been told all along, Mike, that if the Atlanta Falcons enter, let's say, game 16, if they enter game 16 with a 3-12 record, and the Minnesota Vikings are 5-10, let's just say, then there's a good chance they're not going to make that game up unless they create a Week 18. But I don't think the NFL is going to be motivated to absolutely have to play 16-game season for everybody if the games do not matter toward the playoffs. Now, you would think that the Bengals game against the Colts could matter to the Colts, and they absolutely want to play that game. But we don't really know that right now, which is why I will not be surprised. And I don't know what they're going to do. I will not be surprised if the NFL says, we'll tell you down the road about the status of this game.
Yeah, Peter, my understanding is that when something like this arises and there's a complication with one of these games, Howard Katz, the scheduling guru for the NFL, has a program available to him where he can punch in the game that needs to be postponed and instantly gets all of the options for making it work. But that's all premised on the various teams affected having flexibility, and the main flexibility in the schedule comes from the bye week. As the bye weeks begin to go away, the chances of fixing these postponements by saying we're going to move this game here, we're going to move this game here. Look, they had 7 moves they had to make to accommodate a 1-week delay of Broncos-Patriots. You're going to run out of options at some point, and that's when Week 18 comes into play. And I'll just say this as it relates to the possibility of a 5-10 Vikings team playing a 2-13 Falcons team. That game may mean a hell of a lot when it comes to the chase for Trevor Lawrence. So, while we may avoid having winning percentage determine who gets in the playoffs, maybe winning percentage or losing percentage determines who gets Trevor Lawrence. And in a roundabout way, that's another reason to try to play a game that otherwise doesn't matter for playoff purposes. Even if you're not going for the first
But
pick,
I just don't see him, Mike.
A clear picture of who deserves which pick in the top 10.
I get it, but I don't think that's a reason to add another week to the schedule. I just don't. And I don't think the NFL is going to do that. I think they would rather have the draft order basically made up by winning percentage. And look, all we're doing right now is speculating. I'm telling you what I believe to be true, because the other thing about Howard Katz, and yes, they do modeling based on, okay, how many moves do we have to make to get this game in Week 10, let's just say. All right? But, Mike, do you want to use all those moves on a game between an 0-5 team and a 1-4 team? Do you? I don't. There's only a finite number, and there's going to be another team next week or the week after. There's only a finite number of moves you can make. You're much better off rescheduling the game between 4-1 and 3-2 teams, because as of right now, that game has a much better chance of having a bearing on the playoff race.
And before we take a break, remember this, the Chris Mad Dog Russo suggestion from last week, which is brilliant, and I think this is what the league will do if there is an 18th week. You don't tack it on to the end of the schedule. You make Week 18, Week 17. Week 17, that crescendo of games that determines everything for the most part, playoff positioning, who's in, who's out, that becomes your Week 18. So the makeup games would be right before that if they do have to do it. And it feels like it's moving in that direction. And every day that we get one of these Clarence Beeks crop reports with positive tests from this city or that city, especially on a Thursday or a Friday, it really increases the chances that it's going to happen in a week where they can't make the game up, and we are going to have an 18th week somewhere, somehow.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.